Have your attention, please. You need to bring the Spiny Dogfish Board to order. Okay, thank you. It's the meeting of the Spiny Dogfish Board. My name is Mark Gibson from the state of Rhode Island. I'm the board chair. And in my words of my colleague from Maine, Mrs. Stockwell, we're going to turbo through this meeting because we're way behind during the day and there's a substantial board to follow, and we have a fairly simple agenda. So the first issue is the agenda, and we have one under other business. We'd like to add a report from NOAA Fisheries on the dogfish possession limits. You'll remember that there was a discrepancy or a divergence between the two councils on the recommendations for the possession limit, and of course the commission is at 4,000 pounds, and I believe there has been a decision made by NOAA Fisheries on the federal possession limit, so we'd like a report from NOAA Fisheries on that. Is there anything else to add or change in the agenda? Seeing none, is there any objection to approving the agenda as modified? Seeing none, the agenda stands approved with that addition. We next have proceedings from our May 2014 session. Are there any requests for edits to those proceedings? Seeing none, is there any objection to approving those proceedings as presented? Seeing none, the proceedings are approved. Next item is the opportunity for public comment on items that are not on the agenda.
Nobody signed up.
No one signed up, and I'm seeing no one indicating a wish to speak to the board. So now we'll move right to draft addendum 4, which we're considering for public comment, and we'll turn to Marin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This presentation is very brief. This draft addendum 5, today we are considering approving it for public comment. And so here's just the process. Back in May is when this addendum was developed, and as I just mentioned, we reviewed the addendum today, and the board approves it for public comment. Then it goes out to public comment and public hearings, which would be this fall, and then in October we would come back and consider it for final approval. And just a little background, the Shark Conservation Act of 2010 requires all sharks except smooth dogfish be landed with fins naturally attached, and our Spiny Dogfish FMP allows processing at sea of Spiny Dogfish with a maximum fin to carcass ratio of 5:95. And the problem with this is that a key goal of the Spiny Dogfish FMP is to maintain consistency between federal and state management of the species, and so Addendum 5 was initiated to address these inconsistencies. So there are two options and just one issue. Option A is status quo. Fins of Spiny Dogfish may be removed at sea. If fins are removed, the corresponding carcasses must be retained. The ratio of the wet weight of fins to dressed weight of carcasses on board the vessel cannot exceed 5:95. And option 2, which is a fins naturally attached policy, removing any fin of Spiny Dogfish at sea is prohibited, including the tail. Any Spiny Dogfish must be landed with fins naturally attached to the corresponding carcass. Gutting and processing fish at sea is permitted so long as the fins remain attached by a portion of uncut skin. So if this is approved for public comment, as I mentioned, we would have a 30-day public comment period, hold public hearings in the states that would like public hearings, and reconsider this for final approval in October. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Marin. Does anyone on the board wish to comment on the draft addendum before we entertain a motion to move it out for public hearing? Not seeing anybody wants to comment. Would somebody like to make that motion? Terry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Because we're all running late, I move to approve draft addendum 5 for public comment.
Thank you. Seconded by Rick Bellavance. Motion by Ms. Stockwell, seconded by Rick Bellavance. Any board discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion. Do you need me to read that? Seeing that, the motion carries unanimous. Okay, under the item we added, NOAA Fisheries, could you speak to us about the possession limit? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, as indicated, And as you know, as I spoke at the meeting, the last meeting of the board, we published a proposed rule trying to find a place between the two councils. The Mid-Atlantic Council had recommended a 4,000-pound possession limit for spiny dogfish as part of the 2014 and 15 specifications, and the New England Council had recommended no possession limit or unlimited catch of spiny dogfish. We proposed unlimited, mainly in an attempt to garner as many comments as possible to inform a decision at either end of the spectrum or somewhere in between. As you all recall, this board considered a motion to increase the Commission's possession limit to 7,000 pounds, and that failed for lack of a supermajority. But there was clearly some interest among the state representatives for at least a modest increase in the possession limit. So we did actually, for a proposed rule on dogfish specs, we received quite a number of comments on that proposed rule. The final rule will publish on Friday. It has already filed, so it's public, but it will publish on Friday, so you can find it in the Federal Register. And it's effective on September 8th. So in that final rule, we are increasing the quotas for 2014 and 15 consistent with the recommendations of the Council, and increasing the possession limit from 4,000 pounds per trip to 5,000 pounds per trip.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any questions from the board for Michael at NOAA Fisheries? Seeing none, we already have a 4,000-pound possession limit. It's my understanding that we wouldn't revisit that until February for the quota specifications, possession limit specifications in February of 2015. When does the federal limit take effect?
September 8th.
David Board. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make this really brief. That, you know, the problem that this sets up is once again we end up with a disconnect between the state and the federal regulations. And as the addendum that we just approved for public hearing, one of the goals is to make consistent state and federal regulations. So, you know, it's an awkward position. We had this vote at the last meeting. I won't go back and regale anyone with the agony of the vote. But if anyone that voted on the negative side of that vote or abstained on that vote was willing to change their position, then we could make a motion to increase the possession limit to 5,000 pounds and have consistent regulations. Thank you.
I'm not sure we have time on the agenda, nor does the agenda contemplate a substantive action or reconsideration of that. I'm not seeing anybody. Walter?
Would it be out of order or out of policy to include that in the addendum that we just voted, to reconsider the addendum and include that?
Tony, do you want to speak?
The board can change their specification that they set, and because you're not in the same meeting, you don't need the person that was in the prevailing side. You can just revisit your quota or your trip limit, and you have the ability to set trip limits through board action, so it doesn't need to be through the addendum process. So if it's the will of the board to change the trip limit here today, then it is a possibility.
Well, if I understood Mike, you said this become effective in February. We have an annual.
September.
When did you say? September. Okay. David Pierce, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it was my understanding that the state of Rhode Island is putting together a proposal regarding trip limits. I thought that was going to be offered up today, but apparently you're not quite ready. So I assumed that you were going to bring it forward at our annual meeting. Therefore, it makes sense to me to wait on trip limits until the annual meeting when Rhode Island will have a proposal to bring forward, and then we can discuss that. I would not want to make a change in the limit today and then make another change in the limit or the approach in a month and a half or so. So that would be my suggestion, that the board wait until Rhode Island offers up what it is preparing, and then we can discuss that. And of course, at that time, get the input from the processors, from the fishermen up and down the coast. They'll be made aware ahead of time what might happen, as opposed to a relatively small increase that, frankly, isn't worth the effort to go through in terms of regulatory changes and the like. So that would be my suggestion, Mr. Chairman. I know that you and David Borden and others are working on this, so I'd like to see what you're going to be presenting.
Thank you for that, David. Yes, certainly this decision complicates the viability of our proposal, given that we were talking about an aggregate weekly limit, which would now be precluded with the exception of state fishermen. So I certainly like that. I like that advice that we need some more. Rhode Island certainly needs some more time to think about how we should react to that, and I would be very nervous about the board jumping into this issue right now again. It's up to the board, though. John, you wanted to speak to this, and then Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a quick question. I just wanted to make sure we're just talking about the states that are covered by the possession limits in the plan, and that's Maine through Connecticut, correct? That you're
The northern region has a trip limit that's
right.
4,000, so this would be yes.
Okay. Thanks.
I had Rob and then Doug.
Yeah, I know based on last April when there was a conference call well attended by industry that the 5,000 is probably not even a middle ground, but it's getting close. And I know in Virginia the struggle right now is even a little different than the federal-state imbalance. It's a situation where in order to gain harvesters, you need something more than 4,000. So, I'd be in favor of waiting till October, but I think we all have a pretty good discussion about, just what is involved in terms of moving forward, because the situation in Virginia, from what I understand, is one where you have to entice the harvesters a little bit to make sure you can get the product on top of all the other situations that we know about.
Doug?
Yeah, I just want to make the point that it was more than just Rhode Island that was interested in having an increase in the trip limit here. And so while I respect the fact that Rhode Island is trying to put together a proposal, we're not trying to put together a proposal. We would just like to be able to have a 5,000-pound trip limit. We were hoping higher, but even 5,000 pounds will help, because as was put together in public comment for us, right now a 4,000-pound trip is, at the prices they were getting, is not economically viable, particularly during the winter when there's not other species associated with that trip. So I would like to at least try right now to see if we can increase the trip limit to 5,000 pounds, and I'm going to make a motion. And if I can make a motion to increase the trip limit to 5,000 pound, and if I can get a second, you can't second it.
Is there a second to that motion? Terry Stockwell. I'm advised that this will require a two-thirds majority roll call vote. Okay, Charlie, you want me to read the motion? Move to increase the trip limit to 5,000 pounds in the northern region. Motion by Mr. Grout, seconded by Mr. Stockwell. Rick Bellavance, do you want to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had one quick question. Is it something that would be important to put a time of effectiveness on that to coincide with the federal action, or just leaving it the way it is?
Is that a question to the mayor?
I could go either way. If I think we could put it in right. We could make it effective right now, but okay. For the purpose of remaining consistency with our federal counterparts, we'll have it effective. What's the effective date again? Effective September 8th.
Okay. Terry, do you have your hand up on that? Any other comments on the motion? Motion to revisit the possession limit to 5,000, increase to 5,000 pounds. Dave Borden.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rather than have all of us repeat what we did at the last meeting, I would suggest that we limit the debate here and allow for a 1-minute caucus, or a 2-minute caucus, so we can talk to a few people and then call a question. Thank you.
But, we're going to go to the audience, given that this is sort of an unexpected outcome of the board meeting, for me anyways. Does anyone in the audience wish to comment on this motion? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Attorney John Whiteside, representing the Sustainable Fisheries Association, who are the 3 processors in Massachusetts still remaining doing spiny dogfish. We would be in support of the 5,000-pound trip limit, whether it was at this point or at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? Seeing none, I'll go back to the board. Have you had enough time to discuss this? Yes, Representative Peake.
Thank you. I'd just like to support the comments made by my colleague earlier. I think we're going to have a more comprehensive discussion over trip limits in October, and rather than nibble away at it now and then look at something perhaps larger with a Rhode Island proposal in October, I think we should let sleeping dogs lie, every pun intended, for now, and just take this up at the October meeting. Thank you.
Anyone else from the board? Dave Borden, looks like you have the last word.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just so everyone's clear, the context of the Rhode Island discussions is to come up with a conservation equivalency proposal that operates within the context of whatever trip limit is in place. So if this board authorizes 4,000 pounds, we're going to try to craft a Rhode Island proposal around that, or if it's 5,000 pounds, we're going to craft a proposal around 5,000 pounds. So they're really separate issues. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to have Min call the roll.
Massachusetts.
Is there any objection to the motion? Yes, there is. Thank you.
Maine?
Yes.
New Hampshire?
Yes.
Massachusetts?
No.
Rhode Island?
Yes.
Connecticut?
Yes.
New York?
Yes.
New Jersey?
Yes.
Delaware?
Yes.
Maryland?
Yes.
Virginia?
Yes.
North Carolina? U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service? Abstain? No fisheries?
Yes.
Motion carries 10 yes, 1 no,
1 abstain.
1 abstain,
1 no.
and 1 no. Thank you for that. Anything else to come before this board? There's a motion to adjourn made and seconded by everybody. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Joe.
I need to know, I can have a hard time understanding when somebody says no. So who said no?
No one. No nulls. It would be one absent.
Sorry, Joe, there was no nulls, there was an absent.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, we're adjourned.
We will start the Summer Founders Cup and Black Sea